Pacific War Ghosts. My travels to the South Pacific battlefields of World War II. Papua New Guinea. The Kokoda Track and the Battle of Buna. By August 1942, the Imperial Japanese Army, having occupied the Bismarck Archipelago and following the inconclusive Battle of the Coral Sea, turned its sights on Port Moresby on the island of Papua New Guinea. Ordered to occupy Port Moresby, General Tomitaro Hori landed his South Seas detachment at Buna, Gona and Sanananda on the northern coast of Papua New Guinea and launched an overland attack on Port Moresby via the Kokoda Track. Mistakenly believed to be some sort of road by both the Allies and the Japanese, the Kokoda Track was in fact a 60-mile-long, winding, narrow footpath that ran through dense jungle and up and down the near vertical ascents and descents of the rugged Owen Stanley Mountains. Seen here, winding up on the right side of the photograph, are the infamous Golden Stairs, a muddy 3-foot-wide footpath of 2,000 man-made steps that climbed from the Goldie River up to the top of Imitar Ridge. Every Allied soldier and stretcher bearer, as well as all ammunition, mortars and field guns, had to climb or be carried up and down this ridge and the hundreds of other ridges and valleys that lay ahead. Japanese efforts to delay Allied reinforcements and supplies from reaching Port Moresby increased as dozens of Mitsubishi bombers flying out of Rabaul attacked Australian ships as they arrived at Port Moresby. Heavily damaged by bombs and set on fire, Australian supply ship MacDouey was deliberately run aground on a reef in Port Moresby's Fairfax harbour in an attempt to save some of its cargo. I took this photo of the wreck of the MacDouey on a visit to Port Moresby in 1980. Gradually forced back by the hastily assembled 39th Australian Infantry Battalion and Papuan troops, the Japanese advance, running out of supplies and ammunition, was finally stopped at Ioribaiwa Ridge, less than 35 miles from Port Moresby. Having suffered severe losses and on the verge of starvation, the Japanese were forced to retreat back along the Kokoda Track to their original positions at Buna and Gona on the shores of the Solomon Sea. Ordered to hold their positions at all costs, the remnants of the South Seas detachment were resupplied whenever possible with limited amounts of food and ammunition by Daihatsu barges sailing at night from Japanese bases further up the coast. Anxious to cut off any supplies from reaching Buna and Gona, Allied aircraft such as Wirraways and P-38 Lightnings bombed and strafed all ships and barges sailing along the coast. This heavily damaged P-38 Lightning, returning from attacking Japanese positions, managed to fly over the Owen Stanley Mountains, only to crash in the Waigani swamps as it tried to reach Port Moresby's Jackson Field. Making good use of the tidal swamps surrounding Buna and Gona, the Japanese had constructed well-camouflaged bunkers of earth-filled oil drums and coconut tree logs, skillfully positioned to guard the few dry ground approaches. Allied troops attacking the Japanese positions had also been resupplied and were now equipped with Stuart light tanks. Reinforced by American troops and supported by the light tanks, the Allies gradually overwhelmed the Japanese bunkers one by one. Finally, one night, the few surviving Japanese troops abandoned their positions and, swimming out to sea on makeshift rafts, made desperate attempts to reach Japanese bases further up the coast. The bravery and tenacity displayed by Japanese soldiers at Buna and Kokoda did not bode well for the Allies, as they made plans to drive all Japanese forces from the South Pacific. On my visit to Buna in 1980, I used the remains of this Japanese 3-inch anti-aircraft gun to locate the position of the old airfield and the Buna battlefield. Accompanied by a local villager, we walked through fields of kunai grass, around swamps, and finally onto the beach, where we came across the bullet-ridden wreck of this Daihatsu landing craft. Were it not for the rusted remains of several barges and a handful of salt-encrusted cartridges I found lying in the waves, there was little sign of the epic battle once fought on this beautiful tropical beach. Just outside Port Moresby lies the Buna War Cemetery. In the distance, on gently rising ground, the Cross of Sacrifice overlooks the final resting place of over 3,800 Commonwealth servicemen, of whom nearly 700 remained unidentified to this day. May they rest in peace.